Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Cosmic Leadership Podcast. I'm so excited today because we have Helena Woods with us. She is an astrocartographer and astrologer, and I have found her to be so helpful in my life. Thank you so much to all of you who came on Instagram and sent me your recommendations. I was super happy to hear about Helena. Helena also has this incredible YouTube channel. She lives in France. And on her YouTube channel, she talks about slow living. So that was actually the way that I was introduced to her work because I really would like to get into some slow living. And then I heard from all of you that she was the astrophotographer to go to. So thank you so much for your recommendations. And I'm so excited to welcome her here to the podcast today. Helena is a blogger, author, astrologer, and YouTuber. As an astrologer, she uniquely specializes in astrocartography, helping people find the best places to live and travel based on their natal chart. She lives abroad in France and creates creative videos about slow, intuitive living on her popular YouTube channel, Helena Woods. Her first book on slow living will be published spring of 2023, and I can't wait. Welcome, Helena.
Hi. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here and connect with you.
Me too. So let's dive right in. What made you so interested in astrocartography? How did it all start for you?
Yeah, well, I've always had an interest in the cosmos, in astrology, from high school. Like in high school, I would go to the bookshop, the spiritual bookshop, and it was always the astrology section that caught my eye and made me stay and read all the books. And it was actually after I got married, when I had moved to France. So I had been traveling a lot in the years prior to that. I had been moving a lot and traveling. So I had lived in Egypt for a month. I had lived in Bali for a month. I had lived in California. I'd lived in DC and New York. I had lived on all these different planetary lines
Mhm.
and experienced radically different energies. Like the
Yeah.
energy from New York was so different from California. And obviously, energy is different with the people, like the places
Yeah.
will feel different. But for me, the experience was so specific. And so after my honeymoon, it was my honeymoon in Egypt was like just really terrible. It was
Oh,
really a hard energy. It was a lot of fighting and just like energy's just not working. And I was like, why is it that I've always felt so drawn to Egypt? But then this whole experience, the whole energy that I felt for the whole month, almost 2 months that I was there, why did I feel that way? And then I was living in France, having the most peaceful, enjoyable, slow living experience imaginable. And that was when I discovered astrocartography. And I started learning about it. I heard about it, I think, through a podcast or something. And that like really sparked the interest because I loved traveling and living abroad and living in different places. And so when I started learning about astrocartography, I had already had the basis of astrology. So I understood how to read a birth chart and I understood the archetypes of the planets. So reading an astrocartography chart is like really easy once you know astrology really. And when I looked at this map, it was like so obvious. I have a Mars ascendant line going through Egypt, one of my hardest lines in astrology, on the physical body or the sense of self. So this was a really hard place for me personally. And then living on my Venus IC line, which is like the line of home and family and belonging and creativity and inspiration. This was, in France was when I was inspired by creativity. And it was when I got inspired by the visual arts and slow living, all things that are keywords for Venus. So it was just kind of like, wow, I'd already lived it and
yeah.
experienced it. And so I could see how accurate it was. And then I started reading for my friends, reading celebrity influencer charts for 4 years.
Mhm.
And then it was last winter that I started offering readings, and it's just been so divinely, like, just amazing.
That's so great. So, how would you, I mean, I feel like our audience knows what astrocartography is, but let's imagine we have some first time listeners here. How would you describe astrocartography to them?
Yeah. So, what it is basically when you were born, when you took your first breath, you have a natal chart with a natal promise. And that's basically your blueprint for life. But along with your natal chart, you also have a map of the world that you can look up online for free or anywhere. And you can see that there are longitudinal lines that cross across the globe. And these lines are in alignment with the planets that there were when you were born. So, basically you can travel or move or live on these planetary lines, and they're going to activate the themes of that for you based on your natal chart, but also just the archetypal energies of that planet.
Yeah.
Some lines are going to activate themes of career success. Other lines are going to be more personal. Other lines are going to be more about the self and the growing of the self. And other lines are going to be more about your relationships. And the priority will be more on people, the other people in your life rather than you.
What
And
line
so
is
there,
that?
that's descendant lines. So
Oh,
descendant lines are all about relationships and all
okay.
about the people you're meeting. But some lines are more supportive in your life and other lines are more challenging. And so based on your natal chart, understanding the natal chart, but then also understanding the planetary significations, you can harness those energies by traveling or going to those places in the world.
Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so can you describe to us, first of all, guys, I have a feeling that you're going to want to go online and check all of this out as you listen to the rest of this episode because Helena has a great way of explaining things. She did our charts and we found it to be so helpful. As everybody here knows, I love LA. It's so beautiful. There's nothing wrong. I have a wonderful community. I have work that I love. It's beautiful here, but it just hasn't felt right. And
Yeah.
I haven't been able to put my finger on it. And so Helena helped us do all of that. So if you want to figure some things out today, I encourage you to go to astro.com, or you can even just type in astro.com travel into the Google search bar and it will bring up this weird map with all these different lines on it. You enter in your birth information, time, date, place you were born, right? Anything else, Helena?
Yeah. Location, specific time and date. Yeah.
Okay. And then you hit go and it pulls up this wild, crazy map with all this gobbledygook on it. You can switch to make it like the area you're looking in. So Europe, North America, Asia, so that you can get a clearer sense of the lines. So you can pause the podcast, go pull that up, and then come back. So, Helena, can you explain to us this ICAS, all of these? Because we have all the planetary lines, right? So we can see like where Jupiter is, where Mars is in certain locations. But what do all the little letters mean?
Yeah. So the first one is the ascendant, which is the AS symbol, and it refers to the self. It refers to the physical body. So, health matters physically, but also just this is a place that the focus is really going to be on growing yourself, and life themes and life lessons are going to be focused more on your self work, your self awareness, anything involving the self. And then we go into the IC, which is the home and the family. It's also the past, traditions. It's also, I've found for a lot of people, ancestry and lineages can come from very important IC lines. So this is really about the homeland, community, belonging. I find moon IC lines, for example, or Jupiter IC lines or Venus IC lines to be especially powerful in just feeling a sense of home and belonging and connection with the land and with where you are. They're also just more positive. Depends on the placement, but in the natal chart. But in general, those are really positive for home and like living, retirement, things like that, family life. Then you have the descendant, which is the DS symbol. That's all about relationships. It's love, partnership, relationships, friends. Also great for business partnerships, like collaborations with other people. If you want to grow a business and you want to work with other people, descendant lines can be really positive for that. But in general, the focus is more on the other person rather than the self. And then finally, you have the MC lines or the midheaven. This is the highest point in the chart. So this is this place where you're seen publicly. This is the place of recognition, of being seen. It's not a personal place or a private place. This is like really getting recognition for your work, and being more public in your life. So those are the four. Each one has a different theme. I find that people who go to Descendant Lines, much more focused on relationships there. People who
Yeah.
go to MC Lines, they get a lot more attention for their work.
Okay. All right. So, let's dive in a little bit more. So I think it's too hard to say what each of the planets does, but
Yeah.
everybody, you're always able to Google that.
Yeah. And
Um,
I can give some brief keywords for
okay,
each
go
one.
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the sun is our vitality, it's our willpower, our energy. This is a place of shining in your life. It's also a place of ego and personality. Then you have the moon, which the moon is very emotional. It's a place of intuitive connection. It's also a place of belonging. Then you have Mercury. Mercury is all about ideas, the exchange of ideas, speaking, writing skills, any kind of communication. This is really going to be harnessed really well on Mercury lines. Also, research and study. Mars is great for initiation and impulse, starting new things, having courage, taking leaps of faith. Also, it's the planet of aggression and war. So, depends on the person's chart, but Mars lines can be hard for someone. Then you have Saturn lines, which is the other challenging line. It's a place of restriction, constriction, blocks, delays in life. It's an energy of like feeling like no matter how hard you're pushing, there's a wall. That's very Saturnian. It's also a place of just hard work and discipline, but in a very cold way, a very serious way. Then you have Uranus, which is excitement and originality. And like if you need to shake things up in your life, Uranus lines are great for that. Neptune lines are great for spiritual growth and spiritual connection. Anything that is unseen or non-physical, things that are non-tangible, like not money, not, anything physical, anything that's unseen, Neptune lines. And then Pluto lines, intense, extreme in transformation, a death and rebirth, can be very painful depending on the natal chart. And then Jupiter lines is abundance, growth, expansion, optimism, feeling just happy go lucky. Really, it's all about growth and expansion is Jupiter. And then Venus is pleasure, slow living, enjoyment, leisure, just enjoyment. It's also love and yeah, partnership.
Oh, that's so cool. So as you were talking, I hope everybody's got their charts pulled up and they were looking at all of those different things. So one of the things that I did in my session with Helena that I also am kind of doing right now, just because I wanted to remind myself of what was happening. I'm going to share my screen for those of you who are watching this with us. So I've cropped out my birth data. My birthday is coming right around the corner.
Yeah,
Um,
Cancer.
so the place where I've been the most happy in my entire life, like the place that felt the best to me, was this tiny place called Timor-Leste. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see me circling it on the map. I'm on the Asia part of my own map. And so as you were talking, I was like, that's so weird because it's not like I have Jupiter right there in Timor-Leste or Venus, that one about slow living and enjoyment of beauty. But I do have Uranus basically right on top of where I was living, and that is all about shaking things up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so in that, my job in that place was to shake things up. That's what I
Wow.
did.
With your
I,
work?
yes, this was when I worked for the UN and I worked on the law against domestic violence. I worked on the policies against gender-based violence and worked with women who were getting out of abusive relationships, training people how to handle that, training police, training other social workers. It was amazing. And I love to shake things up. That's definitely part of my personality as a manifestor in human design, too. So that was kind of the perfect place for me to live. And then as you were talking, I was also looking at and it's MC, right? MC is the career one.
Yeah, and it's great for service, like being a humanitarian, being someone that gives back, but in a very liberating kind of way, like
Yeah.
liberation for others. Yeah, that's very, very in alignment. Yeah.
Oh, it was the best. It was the happiest time of my whole life, still to this day.
Wow. Oh, cool.
And I was noticing how it's kind of close to this pink Jupiter line, and it's a DS line, right? And DS is about your
Mhm.
relationships with other people. I met my six best friends there who are still like, we never talk, but we love each other so much. And I know that if the shit hits the fan, they're there, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they live all over the world now. Actually, no, that's not true. One of them lives in America, but most live in different places. But we all
Wow.
met there.
That's amazing. I love that. Yeah, descendant lines are lines where you're going to meet people. Like it's, yeah, I've met so many clients where like they met their spouse on a specific line for their love, love partnership line, and it was a descendant line, or their best friend came born and raised on a descendant line that they had traveled to, or it's just amazing how our relationships with our friends and the people in our lives, they're soul connected, and we can see it as on a map, which is just so cool.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit more about, so I know that so everybody, if you're looking at your chart, you can click on different places and then astro.com will tell you stuff about that place.
Mhm.
But we don't take that too seriously, right? Because a whole lot
Yeah.
of this is also based on your natal chart, and that's
Yeah.
our birth chart, like from the day we were born. So I know when you and I had our session, we were talking about how for me, it was going to be beneficial to live on a Jupiter line because it's the planet
Hmm.
of luck and
Hmm.
opportunity
Jupiter.
and
Yep.
happy go lucky, and also the sun because that's about being seen and your internal world. What else?
Well, sun is great for just shining as who you are, being assertive, being confident, being self-reliant, motivated, independent. On the ascendant, which is that line that's going through in the US for you, it's all about achieving your personal goals in life and being seen for your wants and your desires and getting recognition for that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's been really helpful. But what if you don't have an astrologer in your life or you aren't quite ready to book a session with you yet? How can you look at your natal chart and sort of interpret what you're seeing there in alignment with your chart here?
One of the key things to look at is to see what your hardest planet, what your most positive planet is. You can do this by determining the sect of your chart. So I use traditional astrology techniques. I'm a Hellenistic astrologer. So if the sun is above the horizon, if you have a
Yeah.
day chart, like it's in the top half of the chart, your hardest planet is going to be Mars, and your most positive planet is going to be Jupiter.
So that
If
means if you were born between like 12:01 a.m. and noon the next day.
I would have to look at the chart. It's basically
Okay.
the sun has to be when you have that horizon line, if you pull up your chart and you see that horizon line in the
Okay.
middle, if the sun is above that line, that
Yeah.
means you have a day chart. If it's
Okay.
below the horizon, then you have a night chart.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if the sun's in the top half, basically, Jupiter is most positive, Mars is most difficult.
Okay. I lost your sound. Oh, you're back. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. If the sun is in the bottom half of your chart, below the horizon line, then your most positive planet is Venus, and your most difficult planet is Saturn. Saturn is more challenging. There's other things to consider, like is a planet happy in its chart? For example, is a planet in its domicile? Like Gemini, Mercury would be in Gemini, or Mercury would be in Virgo. Those are planets, or Mercury is in its home in those places, right?
Okay.
Each planet has a place where it's very happy and a
Yeah.
place where it doesn't it's not able to use its strengths like
Yeah.
if it were somewhere else. So if a planet's exalted, or if it's in its domicile, it's supported.
Yeah.
If it's in its detriment or in its fall, it's not going to be as supported, or the strengths of that planet are not going to be able to be fully used or seen. So that's another factor. The other factor is like, if you have a hard planet, but it's enclosed by the benefics, where you have
What is a
Venus.
benefic?
Benefic are the two most positive planets in astrology. So we have Jupiter and Venus.
Okay.
If you have, like, for example, Saturn, if you have Saturn and they're enclosed by the benefics, meaning if they're within a range of degrees and they're supported on either side, so you have like Venus before it, Jupiter behind it, and they're making these rays and they're hitting it by degree, then there's this element of protection for the hard planet.
Okay.
So there's a couple different things to consider when looking at a chart. It's the sect, it's the nature of the planets within those houses. Are they making really hard oppositions to Pluto, or is there a hard square to Mars? That's going to bring more difficulty. So there are other things to consider, but those are like the main things I look at.
Okay. So I love trying to learn and do all of these things by myself, but then I ultimately am always like, it's like a full-time job, and I already have a
I
full-time job. I have to just
know.
find someone to do this and
I
explain it to me.
know.
Because I remember when we were talking in our session, I was explaining how I'd been looking at these maps for so long, trying to figure out where to move to. And it seemed like, from what I could learn online anyway, it was just like the MC line is the line of career. So you got to stick with the MC line. So I looked for my MC line. There's no MC line on my whole map in America except for the
America.
Pluto, which I
Yeah.
know Pluto is like not great for me.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would love to move overseas again. I miss it so much, but life wise, it doesn't make sense at this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So,
your sun ascendant line is the next best thing. Like,
yes.
it's the next thing after the MC. Just, yeah, you getting recognition for all your undertakings, basically.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I know that's the annoying thing. I have a good friend who, where she lives, she has no lines anywhere within the vicinity
Oh,
of Europe, really, for her. And
oh,
it's just like, oh, I know. But it's like, yes, it's true that, sometimes we won't be living close to the line we want, but we can use that energy. We can still go after and make our own luck, make our own fates. But yeah, there is that element of like, oh, if we just travel or we just move to that
yeah.
line, things will work. Everything is divinely timed, everything is
Agreed.
fatedly timed. So
Agreed.
yeah.
And I firmly, I didn't know any of these things. I was super not involved in this spiritual world when I moved to Timor Leste, my favorite place in the world. And I just knew that I needed to be there, and I couldn't explain why. I got a
Yeah.
job and I went, and it happened in 3 weeks. It happened so fast.
Wow.
And I just knew that I had to go. And I knew about their struggle for independence. I'd read all the news, and I was like, this is probably going to be a really hard life for me, but I have this feeling I'm supposed to be there. And it was magical and amazing. I mean, there were
Yes.
definitely hard. I don't enjoy a squat toilet. I mean, there were there were a lot of health things happening around me all the time. There was a lot of, we moved every 3 weeks. There was a lot of hard stuff.
Yeah.
But when I compare that hard stuff to like average everyday life hard stuff, it felt like not as big of a deal because I had that community from my DS line being there, and I had
Yeah.
that energy of transformation and growth and getting to upend really horrific laws and practices for women. And so I
Yeah.
just felt so happy there. So then what I started to think before we had our session was like, okay, what can I get out of the fact that I'm currently living on my Saturn line, which I loathe? It's like one thing after another. Each day is a new challenge. But what I have gotten out of living on my Saturn line is this dogged ability to keep trying. Like, okay,
Yes.
I know this is what I'm meant to do. I know that even though the computer is not even turning on right now, it will turn on in the next 20 minutes in time for my podcast interview with Helena.
Yeah.
Stupid things
Amazing.
like that. Whereas
Yeah.
I lived so much of my life in New York on my Jupiter line, which was so easy.
Oh yeah. Oh, I remember we talked about the Jupiter. I think it was a Jupiter ascendant line. Like, lovely.
Yeah. Oh, it was lovely. I had no idea how lucky I was, honestly. It was just like, oh, this stuff happens to everybody.
Yeah.
Like,
It's a
no.
feeling of luck, of growth. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I am a manifester, so I'm pretty good at
Oh
getting things
yeah.
going that I want to happen. But being a manifester and living on my Jupiter ascendant line was magic.
Wow.
I'm so
Yeah.
happy I started my business there.
Yeah.
Um,
And you have your sun on your ascendant. So I think like that is such an amazing placement to have sun on the ascendant. But I think if you move to a sun on the ascendant line, like, wow, you're really gonna harness those positive traits of that placement.
Yay. Because my
Yeah.
only other idea was to move back to New York, which it's now been named the most expensive city to live in the
Yeah.
US. I've also done it. Like
Yeah.
I'm definitely an explorer and I love to go live in new places and see what it's like. And I think that's why I
Yeah.
have friends all over the place because I've gotten to live in so many places.
Yeah, I know. It's wild how an energy can completely shift. And it's like you can travel, like you could take a plane or a boat and feel the energy shift from your seat. I've been living on a Venus IC line for the past 4 years, and it's just been
Lucky.
slow, creative,
Yeah.
lovely. It's not a work line, it is enjoyment line. But
Yep.
then I took a ferry from Corsica, where that line's on, to the mainland in France. And as I crossed into that line, like as I got really close to Saturn and I really left that Venus line, my whole energy shifted. I
Oh,
was suddenly wanting to work. I was suddenly serious. I was suddenly stoic and like neutral and like not very emotional. Like suddenly I was harnessing in these Saturnian energies on that Saturn ascendant line. And then as I got closer, I'm currently in Montpellier, where that Saturn ascendant line is literally going right through the city. And I get here and I'm feeling tired and but I still want to work. And then I
yeah.
get COVID, and I get COVID here, and I haven't gotten
Oh
COVID these
no.
whole last, 2 years or whatever. And I'm like, of course, if I'm
Yeah.
going to get it anywhere, it's going to be on a Saturn ascendant line, which, it's one of the hardest places for the physical body and for health. But it's also, I was also looking at my transits and my zodiacal releasing. So it's like you can time things perfectly to see
Yeah.
like when something is going to be activated in your life. And
Okay.
then if you travel to that line at that exact time, wow, is that going to manifest?
Oh,
Um,
exciting.
I know. And that happened. And I was just like mind blown. I was like, astrocartography still blows my mind to this day. I'm just like, oh, it's
It's
amazing.
so cool. I'm
Yeah.
so happy that you're better, by the way. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I'm feeling a lot better. Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about zodiacal releasing, because that is like a completely new concept to me. Maybe you could give us an example. You
Yeah.
have my
So
chart up there, right?
yeah, I have it
Okay.
here online. Well, zodiacal releasing is an ancient timing technique. It's a Hellenistic technique, so it's an ancient form of astrology. But it comes from first century BC. So this is like real old stuff. Um, and Chris Brennan and the Astrology School podcast, they kind of started talking about it online again because he specializes in Hellenistic astrology. So I took his course online on zodiacal releasing, and basically, you can time the chapters of your life. So it's kind of like your life is a biography, a
Okay.
book, and you can open up your book to see sections of your life story. And those sections are decades long. They're 10, 15, sometimes 20-year chapters of your life. And then you can break open those sections and see the chapters of your life. Those chapters are 1 to 2, sometimes 3-year periods. You can break it even further as you're reading your story, and you could see the months and the days. There are challenging times, there are more positive, supportive times. And then
Yeah.
there are also major and moderate and minor peak periods in your life where you can see when things are activated, when you're going to be more busy and active in your career, in your love life. And you can like basically plan for it. You can kind of time out when big things are going to happen in your life. And I've studied hundreds of zodiacal releasing charts. I love celebrity charts, looking at politicians or people from the past, musicians, and it's wild how when a celebrity or anyone in life goes through a huge life transition and they're suddenly
Yeah.
thrown in the public eye, you can literally see it under, it's called a loosening of the bond, or an LB.
Okay.
um, when they hit an LB, usually on a level 2, which is in that year category, their lives completely change. And it's just so wild how you can see everything, like a person's life. And you could see the health, you could see the physical body, which is the lot of fortune. The lot of Spirit is the career, and lot of Eros is love and relationships. And you can find this for free on astro.com just by using Hellenistic in the chart drawing style. Um, just really cool. Like you can prepare for things ahead of time. It's really cool.
Wow. Okay. So, what is the next LB that I have coming? Can you tell?
Yeah. So for you,
LB, and just to refresh, LB is like when something major is about to happen.
yeah.
Okay.
Let me pull up your LB is like, well, LB is a couple things. It's a
Okay.
loosening of the bond. So it can indicate an up leveling, like a promotion in life. Like if you're working towards something your whole life and then suddenly you hit it,
Yeah.
that's like a big promotion, or it can signify a shift in direction, like a pivot in life. Like maybe you decide to quit something and start over with something new, or maybe you change your mind on something. For a lot of Eros, it can be breakups or marriages. It depends. But for you, you have your next LB in your lot of Spirit coming up. It's a Capricorn period, and it's June 4th, 2024. You have an LB. This is a level 2. So this is big. This is a big career change you're going through. Could be a promotion or an up leveling on something that you've been working for a while. Were you working on anything specifically in between March of 2015 to June of 2017?
Yeah, that was when I started working at UN headquarters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because whatever is kind of coming up for you in 24, 25, 26, and that's specifically going to be like November, December of 2025,
Okay.
it has something to do with whatever you were going through during that period. It could be it's foreshadowing things that you're going to be finishing in your life, like things that it's kind of like, you get an idea for something or you're starting something, but then you finish it on the LB, or you go back to it and you up level in a big way on that time period. But for you, it's specifically happening like November 13th to January 14th of 25 to 26.
Oh, 25 to 26. I thought you said 2024 originally.
Well, June 4th, 2024 is when you enter that 2-year LB
Okay.
period of your life. But
Okay.
there's another LB that's happening within that chapter, November 13th, 2025 into January 14th, 2026. So it's kind of like, level 1 is the sections, it's the decades, level 2 is
Yeah.
the years. So you can open it up and see specific dates of when that's really narrowing in and taking place.
Wow, that's
But
cool.
basically June 2024 into August of 2026. That
Okay.
2 year.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting you say that. So, like, a lot of my work with the UN was out in the field working in different places, and I loved that so much. And headquarters was super not for me. But
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't take away from, and that's what started in 2015, I believe. I want to say 20, well, maybe 2014, somewhere around there. But it doesn't take away from the fact that, like, that entire time I was getting to work on equal rights, which is always going to be something really important to me, especially with what's happened now in America, where we're literally having our rights stripped from us as women
Yeah.
or people with uteruses.
Yeah.
Um, and so I still do that kind of work in a number of different capacities just on my own. And so maybe I'm
Yeah.
hoping anyway that by 2024, 25, I can branch that out more.
Definitely. And it doesn't have to be like a specific thing. It could definitely be like a theme or a
Mhm.
topic that you're focusing in on, that you're
Yeah,
going back to,
yeah,
definitely.
that's great.
Wow. And that's the thing about astrology is, with transits, major life transits, or things that are happening in our lives, oftentimes, we can prepare for things to an extent, but it's really when we look back at our zodiacal releasing or our transits that we're like, oh,
Oh
that's what was
yeah.
going on. That's what it was.
Agreed.
So that's yeah, it's so cool.
And I also just, for someone who's so science brained, I was a neuroscientist. I should stop saying was. I am. I just don't do that work anymore.
Mhm.
Um, I find that a lot of the scientific community doesn't believe in astrology and they kind
Yeah.
of look down on it. But I think part of that is fear that there's something out there that might be older than science, that might
Mhm.
have more that might have more resonance for certain people than
Yeah.
plants. I'm not saying more resonance for everyone. I'm saying more
Yeah.
resonance for certain people. And
Yeah.
I, for a long time, had such a hard time marrying that scientific mind with the spirit based mind and with my soul. But what I eventually came to is that it's possible that it's all true.
Yeah.
That is also possible that all of
Yeah.
these things are true simultaneously. And it's also possible that we can find resonance in astrology when we most need it.
Hmm.
And so for me, astrology has been such a tool of self acceptance.
Yeah.
And it's helped me like myself more and understand the things about myself that used to really drive me nuts.
Hmm.
And for other people as well.
Yeah. When the thing about astrology is like, for me, it's the thing that resonates most for me with everything in the spiritual community. Like there's so many things in like the spiritual community that I find, because part of me is very logical, and like I want to see evidence, or I want to see it laid out, and so I think that's why I feel more resonant with astrology, because to me it is the most logical of all the things.
Yeah.
But with astrology, it's really reading a chart. That's really all it is. It's not subjective, it's not intuitive. Reading astrology is not it's
You don't
not
think it's
connected.
intuitive?
No, not at all.
No.
Absolutely not. It's literally looking at a chart or a map and relaying information and having the knowledge and the information so that you can effectively communicate it with other people. But it's not tapping into psychic abilities, it's not tapping
That's true. Yeah.
into any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And that's why I do tarot, to tap into that intuitive part of me. That's why I write to my inner voice, and I do the other more creative things like YouTube. I make videos because that taps me into my intuition and my more creative side. But
Yeah.
astrology is the part of me that is very much like, I am reading this and I am communicating it. That's
Yeah.
all it is. um and it's, astrology is definitely interpretive in the sense that, like, there are certain ways that a planet can play out, right? Like Mars, for example, can be as extreme as war and violence, but it
Yeah.
can also just be courage. It can also just be initiation. There's a gray scale of how that planet can play out in a transit.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that, like, a lot of people that are skeptical of astrology, it's like, well, that transit was supposed to happen. Why didn't it play out? And it's like, well, there are a couple different ways it could play out. It's still the same archetypal themes,
Yes.
but there's a scale on how, and it depends on like other factors, like how many degrees was it within, what's the relationship and the aspect that that planet is making with another. Like there's so many things to consider.
Yeah.
That, with the whole pop psychology, pop astrology, I think pop astrology has really done a disservice to astrology, because it's like,
Agreed.
what's your sun, moon, rising? It's like,
Mhm.
that's just fun and play. But like when you really go deep into the traditions of ancient astrology, it's so much more complicated. And it goes back to like the beginning of time. Like
I know. That's
people
cool.
believed in this in the
Yeah.
beginning. Like, and
Yeah.
scientists, like the majority of humans look to the cosmos. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until, like, I can't remember the exact year it was, but it was like, a lot of people were against, specifically in like the religion, they were against saying that things were fated. They were against destiny. And
Right.
it's like that kind of is what ate astrology. But it's like, there was a point in life when we would just look at it and interpret.
Yeah, and I think that still is true for lots of people around the world. I mean,
Yeah.
we're both Americans. We've both lived
Yeah.
in Europe before, and so we kind of have that lens. But if
Yeah.
you move to certain parts of the world, you literally decide who you're going to marry based on their chart. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I think that's cool. And actually, by the way, I wanted to tell you, on a side note, there's now a dating app called Nui that matches your chart synastry with another person.
Oh
Did
my
you know
God.
about that?
I literally was just telling my husband that I wanted to start something like that a couple days ago. That is
I mean,
insane.
check it out.
I
You can
will I
always
will reach out to them.
you can
What
always
is the name?
also Nuit, Nuit, like night in French.
I'm gonna, oh my God, that's so cool. I'm actually looking for people to help me design and program an app for this astrocartography, to make it so that it's more personal for people's natal charts. because,
Okay.
I just like see with astro.com, it's like, it's so general. It's like moon line, this is what it
Right. I
means. And it's
know.
like, there's
Yeah.
so much more to it. And so I want to design or create an app so people can and get personal guidance based on their map. But I also had the idea of like friendship synastry, like how to make friends with people online using their
Isn't that
synastry.
cool?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so cool. That's
Okay.
awesome.
I hope you do that app because I think that would be an amazing service to all of us. And now, after the pandemic, people are so much more open to this kind of thing. Everyone's kind of gone through a major awakening.
Yeah.
And I feel like even just the friends that I had that were my most mainstream friends, like people I've known since I was a child because I grew up in Rochester, also very close to my Jupiter line. Feel
Oh,
proud.
lovely.
Yeah,
Lovely.
yeah. Even my most mainstream friends are like kind of getting into this stuff and like asking me questions like, oh, will you look at this for me? Oh, what is my human design? What does this mean when my Venus is here? Like, these are not my
Yeah.
professional things, but I'm the only hippy dippy they know. So they
Yeah.
have to ask me.
It's
But
Neptune and Pisces. Like the collective consciousness is really into started in 2011 when Neptune went
ooh,
into Pisces. Basically there's a collective interest in spiritual new age astrology.
okay.
Until I think it's 2025, 2026 when Neptune's going to move into Aries. But yeah, big collective interest in this stuff.
That's so cool. What happens when Neptune moves into Aries? Aries is like drive and ambition and
I think it's Saturn that conjuncts that. I have to look at the map, the chart, the U.S. Sibley chart. But basically, what's going to happen is I predict there's going to be a war between the two realms of thought.
okay.
Um, I
Aren't we
think
already there?
we're there, but not even close. Not even close.
Oh
Like we're
no.
still in the supportive of the new age movement right now. People are
Okay.
just now being introduced and are getting into this stuff now. But I think there's going to be a huge clash between science and spirit once Neptune moves into to Aries. And then when it conjuncts Saturn, I think there's just going to be a lot of just disagreements, wanting evidence, wanting proof, and there's just going to be a big divide, I think. But we'll see what happens. But those are like the main themes I think that's going to come up.
Okay. Well, I will be sure to use my experience as a peacemaker during that time,
Yes,
knowing that I am a scientist and
yes.
also a spiritual person.
Yes. And I've been telling astrologers like this is the time to prepare your arguments for when it's that starts
Yeah.
happening. Yeah, like new astrologers, new people who are like just getting into this. It's like we haven't seen what's going to be playing out in the future decades to come. But yeah, with it online and everything, it's just it's wild. But a podcast that I really recommend people listen to because I am not a I don't specialize in mundane astrology, which is the study of world events and collective world events
It's
with
called
astrology.
mundane. That's the worst name
Mundane,
of
yeah,
all time. Who named it that? That's
I
terrible.
know.
There's
Mundane
nothing mundane
astrology.
about that.
I know. I don't specialize in that, but
Okay.
is a great podcast, the Astrology School podcast with Chris Brennan. He does like a monthly forecast, and
Okay.
he's talked about this before. I think it was in the December 2000 2001 episode that you can hear some really seasoned astrologers talk about this particular transit that'll be coming up.
Okay, we'll check it out. Thank you. So, Helena, what is the most important thing for people to know about how to reach you and where they can find all of your amazing work?
Yeah. My website is like the central hub, helenawoods.com. I have a blog. I've been blogging there since 2015. I've got a lot of, astrocartography posts there. I'm also on YouTube. I make videos. I have two channels, one for astrocartography and astrology, and the other for like my creative videos about my life in France and slow living.
I love those.
Helena Woods, and then the other one is Lena's Light.
Yeah, yeah.
And then yeah, I'm on Instagram at Ms. Helena Woods. And
We'll link,
yeah, if anyone, yeah,
we'll link everything below so they can
yeah,
find you.
awesome. Thank you for having me on. This was so
Of
fun talking
course.
about one of my favorite topics.
You're so fun, and thank you so much for doing our charts because it lent so much wisdom to how to plan for the future. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right, my love. Have a great day.
Yeah, you as well. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.